Hello, this is Ryan Pimentel and Dan Hatt, and we are straight from the cheap seats. And we are reviewing Armageddon 1999. And that was the last pay-per-view of the 1990s. Yes, the good old 90s.
My favorite era of wrestling, personally.
Perhaps the best era of wrestling. I would personally say that 10-year span was the best wrestling ever was in terms of overall work rate, in terms of gimmicks, in terms of impact. And no, I do not mean TNA impact. But yeah, so what does this pay-per-view overall, what should Armageddon 1999 be remembered for, do you think?
I'd say the probably Stephanie McMahon. That's the thing to take away from it, I'd say.
I was thinking the same thing.
You know, I don't really know what else to say about it. I mean, we'll get there when we get there.
Well, at the same time, I kind of want to get there. I think this pay-per-view should be kind of remembered as kind of the beginning of Triple H's domination of the World Wrestling, Federation / World Wrestling Entertainment. Triple H kind of was cemented as this big bad heel with, Stephanie McMahon by his side, quote unquote brainwashing her at the end of the show, and kind of changing up the game. I mean, he went after this pay-per-view. He went into a very legendary feud against Mick Foley, which actually ended up retiring Mick Foley as a full-time wrestler. And memorably, he was the first heel to win in the main event of a WrestleMania. WrestleMania 2000, he defeated The Rock, Mick Foley, in the Big Show in a Four Corners matchup. So it certainly should be remembered as Triple H's kind of coming out party, although he was very prominent the last 3 or 4 years before this show. I think this kind of cemented him.
I wouldn't say 3 or 4 years.
Well, I mean, 97 he was supposed to win the King of the Ring.
Right.
Before
96, I mean, that would be 3 years prior, and he was jobbing out to the Ultimate Warrior in, 15 seconds.
I'd say 97, 98, 99, he was an emerging star, definitely.
98, without question. 97, 98, yeah.
Yeah, 97, 98, 99, he was emerging. At the end of 99 was really his peak year was 2000 in my book in terms of work rate. And, the matches against Foley, against The Rock, against, he had a lot of great matches in 2000. And I think that was kind of the year of Triple H. And I think Armageddon 1999 kind of was the, the start of it all. The pay-per-view where it all started coming together for Triple H and why he was such a, crucial part of the company.
The match that you should not remember this pay-per-view for, without question, is the WWF Championship match.
What was that?
Big Show and the Big Boss Man.
The Big Show and the Big Boss Man, yes.
The work leading up to it, I mean, over the top, without question.
Oh yeah, it was.
Boss Man put in all the effort in the world, though. You can't say anything bad about how much they put into it, how much effort. But I mean, the match itself, you went 3 minutes 11 seconds, and it was no place on a pay-per-view in '99.
No,
especially in a main event.
Well, it wasn't the main event.
So. Well, for the world title.
Yeah, it was one of the main events, and it was, people think of the 1999, the year, and they think of non-stop classics. They think of the Attitude Era at its prime. They think of all these great wrestlers at their peak, such as The Rock and Austin and Goldberg and all these guys, in all these different companies. But I mean, for the championship, having Big Show with Boss Man, that's pretty damn bad. I don't think it gets much worse than that. I mean, Boss Man was always a professional's professional. He was always a reliable performer. He's kind of like a very dependable mid-card worker. He can kind of work as a face or heel.
But that's where it begins and ends.
Exactly. He does not belong anywhere near the WWE title picture. And, having him kind of face the Big Show in '99 was a little bit of a stretch.
It's outdated.
It was a goofy storyline, pure Vince Russo. I'm not sure if he was even with the company at that time. I believe he was. But it was.
I'd be surprised if he wasn't.
It was a pure, flamboyant, over-the-top Vince Russo angle, and it was fun for what it was. But you also had, you had the Rock and Sock connection kind of carrying the WWE at that point, and you had Vince versus Triple H, kind of as a secondary feud. So Big Show and Boss Man were kind of buried way down.
They were an afterthought, definitely.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't think that you're.
Well, it should be mentioned, Stone Cold was at his peak at the time, but he was also injured during this time, so he couldn't be in a title feud. Maybe if he wasn't, you'd have Stone Cold versus the Big Show instead of the Boss Man. Lots of options, but.
Well, to start the show, they went with the 8-man team battle royal to determine the number one contenders for the, at the time, WWF Tag Team Championships for the Royal Rumble. The Acolytes, they won, defeating the Hardys in the end. I don't know, who else did you have in there?
Yeah, a lot of guys.
You had the Headbangers, the Mean Street Posse, Mark Henry and the Godfather, Too Cool, Edge and Christian, the Dudley Boys, the Hardy Boys, and the Acolytes. I'd say it was a solid opener to start the show. I mean, there's a lot of recognition in those names.
Definitely. To me, this was at the peak of WWE wrestling. I mean, you had some of the greatest tag teams in that match. I mean, it was a solid match. It didn't go for very long. It didn't go for maybe as long as it could have, considering how many teams were in the match.
Just under 11 minutes.
Yeah, just under 11 minutes. So it was a solid opener. I kind of wish it went 15-20 instead of that 11. Kind of give it more time for different teams to shine. But it's hard to have too many complaints. It was a solid opener. It was a quality opener, but it perhaps didn't quite hit the levels that it could have with a little extended time. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it for that match. And then you had the first singles match of the night with Kurt Angle and Steve Blackman.
Yeah.
Angle went on to defeat Blackman in the match. I think Angle was really coming out at the time.
I mean, Kurt Angle's first match was at the pay-per-view before. At Survivor Series in November, this was December, obviously. He faced Shawn Stasiak in that opening match. He would win the King of the Ring about 6 months after this pay-per-view. So he was obviously on a jet plane to stardom. Kurt Angle is one of the best wrestlers, one of the best in-ring wrestlers of all time in my book, anyway. And he kind of him and Blackman had a quality match. It was a good match. It was a fine match for what it was.
Just under 7 minutes.
Just under 7 minutes. It was.
Could have given them a little longer.
Could have given them another 3 or 4 more minutes, and it would have been a little better. But again, this was the second pay-per-view match. He looked good. Blackman, he was always solid to me. He was never,
just bland.
He was just a little bland. Yeah, I mean, he was bland, but this was a perfectly decent match. It helped establish Kurt Angle as that kind of, that kind of cocky, insincere kind of heel that everybody hates because he keeps bragging about what he's accomplished and how much better he is than other people, but doing it in a way that is obviously very cloying and obnoxious. So
after that, I mean, you take a breather, I guess. And you get the Four Corners Evening Gown Pool match for the WWF Women's Championship with special guest referees Mae Young and the Fabulous Moolah.
Oh, okay. Now we're talking. Now we're getting to the good stuff, huh, Dan?
Yeah, sure. Ivory was the champion at the time. She was defending against Jacqueline and BB. Now,
Excuse me?
yeah, exactly. If anybody's like me, they have no idea who BB was
BB.
watching it again.
BB Bluff or okay, that's an old reference. Okay,
And
sorry, kids.
Miss Kitty. Miss Kitty won the match in 2 minutes and 45 seconds.
All right.
That you saw some tit. That was really. I mean, this was more so for. This is more so. You know. What do you call it? You know, eye candy.
It was eye candy. It was filler. It was kind of to get the crowd, you know, get the crowd going, kind of give the crowd a breather after the first two matches, which involved a lot of wrestlers, obviously the opener, and then Kurt Angle kind of, you know, it did what, you know.
There's not really much to say about it.
Yeah.
It's the loss for words. Miss Kitty takes her top off.
Yes.
There's
that to say about it.
Yeah, there's that to say
End
about
of story.
it. That's the most memorable thing about it. Other than that, it's Splishy Splash.
Mae Young also tries to take her top off. I don't know if that was edited out. Did she really take it off? Or
I don't know.
I don't know if I want to know. So.
Yeah. Match number 4. I mean, you saw the Hollies take on Rikishi and Viscera, and I mean, this went for just under 4.5 minutes. I think that this was more so to tell a story between Rikishi and Viscera as opposed to a tag match to tell a story between tag teams.
Yeah. I mean, this was right around the time when Rikishi and Too Cool were starting to take off. And to me, they were very entertaining together, especially at the beginning. You know, once, 04 hit and they were still dancing after their matches, it felt very, very old and dated. But around 99, 2000, Too Cool and Rikishi were getting, when they were together, they were getting very, very large pops. And they were, very entertaining in the ring, to me at least. And, I personally don't remember Rikishi and Viscera teaming. But
that's how forgettable it really was.
Exactly.
They were opposing,
the Hollies.
Right, but they were, they were also against each other.
Yeah. But I don't really remember a lengthy Rikishi Viscera feud. I don't know about you.
I don't either. So it was just kind of, it was filler, all in all.
It was filler, but it was also meant to elevate Rikishi, into a, higher face, a more prominent face role. He was a good uppercard face. I don't think he ever exceeded that.
He was fighting for all the fat people in the world that night. I believe is what he said.
Yeah, I believe that's what he said too. I've always been a Rikishi guy. He's entertaining. He's fun. Viscera was
agile for his size.
He is agile for his size. Even Viscera, he wasn't a bad wrestler either. I could watch Big Daddy V wrestle a few matches. He can move for a big guy as well, in my opinion. The Hollies also, I should say, the Hollies were always entertaining, especially together and with Molly and when they were feuding about the hardcore title. I mean, I just think that was a very, very fun mid-card act. I just wish WWE right now, in the year 2014, almost 20 years later, would kind of bring back that fun element, especially in the mid-card. I mean, that kind of stuff. I mean, the main event, you want to see the juicy feuds and the big clashes. You don't want to see the gimmicks like, the 24/7 hardcore title reigns. But I mean, that was just such a fun time, and it was such a spirited, division and feud with so many crazy characters. So I just wish some of that fun was injected into the mid card, some of the purpose and stories and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It is what it is compared to today. But next on the card,
rest in peace, Crash Holly. Rest in peace, Viscera. I should add that.
Yeah, there you go. My favorite match on the card, personally, triple threat for the WWF European Championship. Val Venus, the British Bulldog, and D'Lo Brown. Bulldog was the champion going into the match. What's there to say? I just thought that the match itself, I thought it was well put together. I think the Bulldog, he was a little sloppy in there.
A little sloppy?
Yeah, well, with a hip toss where he pretty much fell on his head and whatnot. But Val Venus ended up picking up the win. I believe D'Lo covered the Bulldog and Val hit the money shot on the both of them. And I don't know, I just found it to be an enjoyable match. It was quick. It was 8 minutes, 20 seconds. But, I mean, had they been given a little more time, I think it would have been better. But,
To me, it was a kind of a cluster. I would have rather enjoyed seeing a straight up Val Venus versus D'Lo Brown. I don't think the British Bulldog at this point added anything. I don't think the European title was even remotely meaningful at this point in time either. And since it was a meaningless title, since the British Bulldog took away so much from the match, I think Val Venus and D'Lo Brown were fine in the match, but I don't think the Bulldog added anything. So overall, I'd say a little disappointing. This match was a little disappointing.
Fair enough. Move on.
So next up is a cage match between X-Pac and Kane. And obviously, Kane had Tori at that time.
She was prominently involved in the match, I believe.
Yeah. The match only lasted 8 or 9 minutes. It was a pretty short match.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, 8 minutes. I mean, I can't even remember it, honestly. I don't know why.
Kane snapped the handcuffs off.
Yeah.
Catches him before he hits the floor.
I mean, he ended up
hit the tombstone,
defeating X-Pac.
And X-Pac and Kane, they were always an entertaining duo. Whenever they teamed together, which was, for a few months, they had a title run, I believe, as a tag team.
Mm-hmm.
They were a very entertaining team. And then they had a lengthy feud as well. I just think they had good chemistry overall. I just think X-Pac and Kane, they were kind of the polar opposites. Kane was the tall, big, quiet guy. X-Pac was little, short, brash. Sean Waltman was always a talented wrestler.
Absolutely.
A kid from Minnesota. Wrestled in the AWA during the dying days of the AWA, and X-Pac could always go in my book, and I think him and Kane just hit it off, and that was one of my favorite programs of the Attitude Era. They really had chemistry together, whether they were teaming or facing off against each other. This was solid. I don't think it was their best work by any means. It was rather, again, the theme of this show, maybe short matches. I don't think Tori added much.
You got a 10-match card, so
yeah. I mean, you had a cluttered card as it was. I don't think the New Age Outlaws run-in added anything, and so that was that. Moving on, we have the Intercontinental title match next.
1 second. One thing about Kane.
Okay.
This is my problem with Kane itself. Look back at Armageddon 1999, Kane, the X-Pac, in the steel cage, and then look at Extreme Rules 2014 World Title match, Daniel Bryan versus the exact same Kane 14 years later. I mean, it's a dated gimmick at this point. I don't want to get too far off topic, but I mean, it hasn't changed.
I know what you're saying. I mean, to be fair, he did become the authority. Kane. He did take off his mask. He has had relationships with various divas over the years. He has kind of, I wouldn't say evolved, but he's kind of altered the gimmick a little. At the same time, Glenn Jacobs is what he is.
And that gimmick doesn't work so well today as it did then.
Yeah, I mean, The Undertaker still works. Kane, on the other hand, I just don't think he has that mystique.
Exactly.
Maybe because he's wrestled more often, maybe because he just doesn't have The Undertaker's overall
skip. Never takes a break.
Yeah, he rarely takes breaks. Just filming See No Evil movies.
Right.
And I think, he's Mr. Reliable, so you got to give him that at least. I mean, I've never been the biggest Kane fan, but the amount of matches he's had, Vince can always rely on him to go out there and, just put in a solid 10 minutes and maybe not steal the show, but always deliver a solid, decent, 3-star match 2.5-star match, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there is value in that, in my opinion. There is value in somebody being so reliable for so long. I mean, you look at how long he's lasted, it's pretty crazy. So,
As you were saying.
Intercontinental title, and that was China versus Chris Jericho.
I enjoyed it.
I thought it was very good.
I thought China, in a man's world, held her own as a woman. The match itself was enjoyable to watch. It wasn't like watching a regular, diva in a match with Chris Jericho. Granted, Jericho could probably have a good match with a broomstick.
Yes, that's probable. I think it was probably the best match on the show. As much as it pains me to say a China match was the best match on the show, I think these two really just delivered a very, very good match. It was slightly over 10 minutes, really back and forth. The crowd was really, really, really into this match, and when you have that many fans into one match, especially one undercard match like this, I think it also elevates the competitors. They step it up a notch. I think Jericho did a masterful carry job, but I think China at the same time, it's not fair to say
Give
Jericho,
credit where credit's due.
Exactly. China could go better than the vast majority of women's wrestlers, and she might have been a little crazy, but the fact is, I would have liked to see China stick around for a little longer than she did. It was, there were some good reversals in the match as well. Really good backdrop superplex, and as well as a sunset flip.
Mm-hmm.
And China eventually taps out. And
in the end, when they interview Jericho at the end, she actually goes back and shakes hands with him.
Yes, yeah.
So a little bit of sportsmanship in a time in the WWE where that didn't really exist.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting segment as well. I think
I can't quite remember where they went with it, but
I don't remember. All I remember is I believe Jericho won the title here, the IC title. I believe he held it until WrestleMania 2000. I believe there was a triple threat between Jericho, Benoit, and Angle for both the European and IC title.
Oh, a unification.
No, it was
No.
it was
Okay.
it was two falls. So
Gotcha.
anyway, good match. Jericho China, check it out. It was a fun feud. It was a fun time. Good solid mid-card storylines, which I enjoyed myself. I don't know about you guys, but more mid-card stories, fun little quirky stories.
It works so much better when everybody has something to do.
Exactly. And I don't care if it's a goofy storyline like Chris Jericho being a chauvinist pig or that works for me. It's a short, quick, easy little feud, and it just works so well, and I wish they'd bring that back. But anyway, not to get off point, next match, we have The Rock and Sock Connection versus the New Age Outlaws for the WWF Tag Team titles. To me, let me just say, I don't remember Al Snow versus Mankind.
You stole what I was going to say.
When did Al Snow and Mankind become a feud that was... I remember Mick Foley referencing it in his books, but I don't remember them actually going with it on TV, but maybe that's just my memory.
I'm with you. The story to take away from this is Al Snow found himself in a prominent role on pay-per-view. Not to take anything away from him, but, really.
And another thing is, how over was The Rock here? This was...
Yep.
That pop was monster. That was the biggest pop in the night by far that The Rock got. And when he tagged in, when he got the tag from Mankind, the place absolutely just exploded. And to me, it was overall a solid match. It was exactly what you would expect from these two teams. It was professional. It was well done. but there was really nothing memorable or especially pay-per-view worthy about it. Maybe an episode of Raw, maybe a house show main event.
I watch a pay-per-view for a definitive ending, preferably.
Yeah.
Not an interference with a DQ.
Yeah.
Granted, sometimes you have to do that to move a story, but, you know, with something like a title match, aside from the world title, which I've come to expect ending in some sort of fluke up until recently, I mean, I think there should have been a definitive winner, as opposed to Al Snow. Once again, Al Snow interfering in the match.
I think the most interesting thing about that is there was supposed to be a feud between Al Snow and The Rock to give Rock something to do during those months, and to give the
oh my god,
and to give the give some rub to Al Snow. But a number of things wound up derailing that, including, you know, obviously you don't want Al Snow versus The Rock going into WrestleMania season. I mean, that's not what you want. So instead, they went with the Four Corners match at WrestleMania, and you know that kind of worked too. So. Next up, we have the WWF Heavyweight Title match between the challenger, the Big Boss Man, against the champion, the Big Show. The Big Show had won the title in a triple threat match at Survivor Series. The Big Boss Man was accompanied out by Prince Albert, and I mean, the Big Show's reign right here. I mean, everybody knew once he won the title at Survivor Series that the Big Show wasn't going to have the title through WrestleMania. I mean, he was kind of a transitional champion. So the WWF didn't want anybody to job that was of any importance to him. So they decided, why not have the Big Boss Man be the challenger? I mean, you know, he beat The Rock in a number one contenders match. So, I mean, that has, you know, that has some credibility, I guess, even though it was by dubious means. And
I find the build-up to this match to be more memorable than the match itself.
Oh, absolutely. It was...
I don't know how legitimate the Big Show's father dying was.
It wasn't. He actually died years before this.
Oh, okay then.
It was completely fake.
You know, and
I don't care. It was awesome. It was awesome.
It was pretty awesome.
It was awesome.
Showing up at the funeral and attaching the casket to the car or truck that he was driving. Big Show jumping on the casket as Boss Man peels away.
Big Show screaming as he's clutching the coffin. I mean, that was just a classic.
Taking the Big Show's mother, don't forget about that, taking her hostage, and telling her to admit to one Paul White that he was in fact a bastard. It's just everything about it was so over the top and so outrageous, but so classic in its own way.
I kind of wish the match itself kind of tried to go outrageous as well, because the match itself was just so bland and bad, and 3 minutes, and
yeah,
it got a lot of hype. I mean, the title,
absolutely,
it got a lot of hype, and it just didn't deliver. I mean, it got more.
What is the Boss Man doing in 1999 that, you know, he all of a sudden is this badass cop character? You know, he's more of an enforcer at this point, but I remember when I was younger, I watched the Boss Man in 92, 93, and, you know, that was a mid-card act.
Yeah. I mean, occasionally at house shows he would face Hulk Hogan. Occasionally, if they really needed a kind of, mid-card heel to kind of step up and get beat by Hogan one night, Boss Man would step up to the plate, but in a pay-per-view in 99...
6 years later.
It doesn't make any...
least.
Yeah, I mean, they would have been better off going with Al Snow, in my opinion. I mean, it wasn't good. It wasn't.
Boss Man and Al Snow had a great feud at one point themselves.
How could we forget that over, what was it, Pepe?
No, yeah, I think so.
But,
anyways, 29 and a half minutes in the no-holds-barred match for Stephanie McMahon, Triple H, and Vince.
That got 29 minutes?
29 and a half. Big Show retained the title in the previous match.
3 minutes.
In 3 minutes.
So you got a 3-minute match, and you got a almost half-an-hour match, back-to-back. Which one do you think the WWE cared more about at that point? I mean, it's pretty outrageous to have a title match that short, but as you could obviously tell, the Big Show debuted that same year, about, 6 months earlier, at St. Valentine's Day Massacre '99. So, he was definitely a transition.
He was fresh.
He was fresh, but he was a transitional champion as well.
Right.
He was
should not be main eventing pay-per-views in Boston, Mass. at Survivor Series in 2013.
Oh no, that was another debacle we'll get to at some point. But
about the no holds barred match, A, I think it went too long.
Without a doubt.
B, if Vince McMahon could stand up to Triple H like this, there's no reason that he should not have been, the most powerful world champion of all time.
Yeah.
The shots these guys took and the brutality of the match, even this was over the top in its own right.
Yeah.
I mean, they hit their heads off, they hit each other's head off of everything from trash cans to helicopters, so that's not an exaggeration. The parking, they ended up in the parking lot. Triple H tries to run Vince over. I don't know. It was a little over the top. Stephanie played the face in peril. She was very worried about her father. And the heel turn for her, I think, was very sloppy. I think a low blow to Vince would have signified it better than the way they did it. Triple H wins, and Vince is laying there unconscious. Stephanie's checking on him, and Triple H picks up the sledgehammer, and he looks like he's about to hit Stephanie. She turns around and looks at him and starts smiling, and they hug, kiss, and raise their arms. And JR makes mention of, she's turned her back on her daddy, and he doesn't even know. A little sloppy, but, point proven.
Yeah.
I don't know what you think about it, but...
it was a typical brawl for that era.
Yeah.
For the Attitude Era. It was kind of a Russo kind of swerve at the end. To me, my favorite year in WWE, even though kind of WrestleMania 2000 was kind of a meh show, 2000 was my favorite year for WWE overall, and it was just a lot of memorable stuff. And I believe a month after this pay-per-view, the Radicals would debut, and I think the Radicals were kind of another signifier that kind of WCW was dying. Triple H was the top and only heel in the business. Let's face it, he was the top heel. The Radicals, Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, Saturn, Malenko, they were WCW. Big Show, Jericho were now firmly entrenched in the main event scene. Mm-hmm. So I think, WWF was on the rise, WCW was on the decline.
It would still take some time.
It would take some time. WCW still had a little life in them, but about a year and a half after this, they were out of business, and the rest is history. But I think you can look at this pay-per-view and say,
solid show, I would say.
I would say solid show. I would say the historical significance of having Stephanie as a heel for the first time. And I remember, around this time, I was wondering, can Stephanie McMahon cut it as a heel? Because her acting was Disney Channel level, to be honest, at that point. She was not a good actress whatsoever as a face. When she was a heel, I tell you what, she was one of the best heels. She's
one of the best heels today.
Yeah, she absolutely is. She had a rough start in 2013, but her work in 2014 has been superb. So overall, solid show. Again, I think the fact that Stephanie turned heel, Triple H kind of began his reign as the top dog. Obviously, Al Snow's big run-in was not a historical moment. Was barely remembered. But and then Big Show Boss Man, who the hell remembers that besides the funeral angle?
Right, the build-up.
Yeah,
like we said.
Yeah, so and Jericho. how good was Chris Jericho to have such a great match with China? I mean, it wasn't a 4 or 5 star, but it was a good 3.5 star match. To have that with China, I mean, he should be commended and applauded, and China should be kind of remembered better than she is now because of all the controversies afterwards. So I would also take that out of the pay-per-view. Also, I believe this is one of the last appearances from British Bulldog at pay-per-view. He was a very, very, very memorable wrestler in the 80s and early 90s. And
it's almost scary to look at that card and see how many people were.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, British Bulldog, the Big Boss Man, and, Viscera, and, Crash Holly, and so on and so forth. Obviously Moolah and Mae Young, who were involved in the women's match.
Yep.
So there's a lot of wrestlers who are deceased in this card. Then again, it is 15 years. It is about 15 years later. So there are going to be a few deaths, but the amount of deaths is a little alarming to say the least. And thankfully WWE has taken steps to rectify that. And
overall pay-per-view,
I'd give it a 6 out of 10.
6 out of 10.
I'd give it a 6 out of 10. Solid 6 out of 10. Main event could have been better. Title match bad. Some good undercard stuff. Memorable angles. I wouldn't say it was a classic by any means, but I'd say a solid 6 out of 10. I'd recommend it. I'd say, a good watch on the network.
I'm probably with you. I'd say about a 5.5, 6. I mean, it memorable in its own ways, but not something that, not something that's gonna...
There's no match on it that I would run out and say, oh, check this out, this is a classic.
Exactly.
There's no match like that by any means. Jericho versus China is the best match on the card in my book, and also, and on Dan's book, the triple threat European title match with Val Venus and D'Lo Brown and British...
I'd say those top 2.
Yeah.
I mean...
Probably. Probably. And the tag team opener maybe is a good, solid match, but...
good for what it is.
Yeah.
It's a battle royal.
Yeah. And the Brawl main event wasn't very, was more important historically for Triple H and Stephanie's rise, not only on the show, but backstage too, because remember around this time, Triple H and Stephanie began having a relationship backstage, behind the scenes, and Triple H had been in a relationship with China. That was ending. He was beginning his run, his climb, really, to the top of WWE, and to...
It was the beginning, the next night, was the beginning of the McMahon-Helmsley era.
Exactly. The end of that show was the beginning of, Triple H's steady,
incline.
Steady incline to the top of the mountain. And right now, you have to say Triple H is one of the top 5 most important people in professional wrestling. He is, without a doubt. So, so check it out, and...
let us know what you think. Any comments?
You can find us on YouTube. You can also find us at email. Our email is ch3apseats. That's ch3apseats@gmail.com. Our Twitter is @ft_cheapseats. That's @ft_cheapseats. Any questions or comments or suggestions, just let us know, and we will respond. And thank you for watching, and go check out some professional wrestling.